The Culture Pop Podcast is brought to you by the law offices of Jacob and Ronnie.
Accident or injury, call Jacob and Ronnie. Call Jacob.
Hey, it's Mase. If you or a friend or loved one is injured in an accident, the first person you should call is my friend Jacob. When I did this, Jacob was great. He helped me by talking through the next steps, which really put my mind at ease. When you're injured in an accident, you got to have an expert. That's why you call Jacob, just like I did. Call Jacob, 844-24-JACOB. That's 844-24-JACOB, or visit calljacob.com.
Call Jacob.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Culture Pop Podcast. I'm Steve Mason, along with Sue Kalinsky. Great guest today. We've got Rory Scovel coming on. He's got a brand new comedy special called Religion, Sex, and a Few Things in Between. It is now streaming on Max. Sue Ballou, I know you're training for your triathlon. Where do things stand?
I trained every day last week except for Saturday. I was supposed to do like an hour and a half bike ride, but it was raining and then it stopped. And I'm kind of a novice bike rider, especially with the bike that I just got. You know, it's a 22 speeder, and I just didn't want to be on slick road. So I called in and said, I'm not going. And it turns out that they did do the run.
Yep.
And they got rained on a little bit, but they did the run, but they shortened it. So then later in the day, when it cleared up, I said, okay, well, maybe I'll make it up and I'll do the ride. And I'm like 2 miles out, and it starts to pour, and I came home. So, but I did a swim.
That's good.
I did the swim yesterday, and it was better than it was the first time because we're swimming in open water. So it's the current, the temperature, wetsuit, all the elements that I'm not used to. But I was able to swim with more confidence because I've been swimming in a pool a lot. Mm-hmm. And I feel like my swimming is getting stronger in open water. So, but we did, I guess, around a mile in total, but we did stop a few times.
Okay, so here's my question.
Yeah.
Aren't you terrified of sharks?
Not in that water.
I am terrified of sharks.
I am too, but there's no sharks in this water. It's the bay in Long Beach. There's no sharks there.
You think there's no sharks in the bay in Long Beach?
There aren't.
Oh, there have to be.
There aren't.
They're everywhere. They're everywhere. Have you not seen those drone shots where they go over the water and you see, there are like 100 great white sharks there? And then there was a sighting of orcas, a pod of orcas down by San Onofre. I mean, I'm just terrified of, I always have had this assumption. Ground for us, water for them. I'm terrified of going in the ocean. Even though I've lived in Venice for much of my life, I never go in the ocean ever.
This isn't really the ocean. It's more like swimming in a lake where I'm at.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm terrified.
So it doesn't even come into my mind.
Yeah, I've always been fascinated with sharks. Like, the megalodon? Have you ever heard of the megalodon?
No.
The megalodon is an ancient shark that lives in the Mariana Trench, and it comes up only once in a while. It's some people think it's a myth, some people think it's real, some people think it's a John Cena movie, which it is. But the megalodon has always been fascinating to me, which is like a shark that is the size of a whale.
And where was this supposed to live?
In the Mariana Trench out by Guam and Saipan, where, by the way, this is a weird story. Did you know that I used to own a movie theater in Saipan?
I think I didn't know that. No.
Yeah, so it's out by
How did that happen?
So we got word, this was years ago, like mid-90s, that there was a theater in Saipan that had closed. And it was the only theater on the island of Saipan. And we were like, we have got this. We have got this down. There are no other theaters. So we took it over. It did really, really well. We only had a 2-year lease and then they tore it down, but we made a lot of money in those 2 years. But they have this thing called betel nut in Saipan. Do you know what it is?
Yes, I've been to Guam.
Okay, so you've seen it. It's like these red, I don't know, they come from the ocean and then you spit the red juice out, something like that?
Okay. I went to Bali,
Okay,
and I went with Kenny, my old boyfriend.
sure.
And he liked to get high, and he liked to try new things.
Oh.
So I knew about betel nut because I did stand up in Guam.
Okay.
And so all he wanted to do was find betel nut. And the only thing that I knew about it was that it's this nut that you chew,
Yes.
and the juices, you can't swallow the juices, because if you swallow the juices, you get way too high. So you chew it. It's like chewing tobacco in a way, and you spit it out, right?
Yeah.
So we get on this tour bus to this little village, like is an indigenous as you can possibly be in Bali, right?
Right.
And he says, I want to walk down some of these streets because a lot of the older men in Bali are betel nut users, and you can always tell because their teeth are rotted from chewing this, right?
Yeah.
So we're walking down all these side streets, and we stray from all the tourists, right?
Yep.
And he finds some old guy sitting down in the road, like in front of a shack, and he starts talking to the guy about betel nut, and the guy had betel nut. So basically what it is, there's like a paste inside of the nut, okay?
Does it come out of a tree or out of the ocean?
That I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. So Kenny's like so excited, and he puts it in his mouth, and he starts chewing it, and then all of a sudden his face turns like completely white.
Really?
And he looks really scared, which scares the hell out of me, because I'm thinking I'm on vacation with my boyfriend in Bali, and he's going to have a massive heart attack and die. So he looks at me, and he tells me that he's like so stoned, like really stoned, like scared stoned. I'm like,
oh, wow.
Nice move, Ken,
Yeah,
so
right.
So it took a while. We walked around a little bit. We had to find our way back to the bus. We get on the bus, and I just reamed him like, you can't do this. This is crazy. But so I was kind of tempted to try it when I was in Bali. I'm not in Bali, in Guam.
Yeah.
Because the other comedian, I was with Lenny Clark, and spent a week with Lenny Clark, which is a whole another story. Anyway, so he did it, and he got really, really not as high as Kenny, but like I like freak out about being in a foreign country and doing a drug that's indigenous to the country.
Yeah, there's no way. But I just looked it up. It does grow on trees, and it's a stimulant, and it definitely gets you high. So anyway, I never did. What I was going to say about the movie theater was, so you'd go in at the end of the night, all over the floor would be this red betel nut. And so somebody would have to go in and clean up the betel nut juice every single night at the theater. It was absolutely disgusting. But we made a lot of money. And that was the good part of it. Yeah. So anyway, that's where the Mariana Trench is. So I try to give people a little extra that I don't talk about on the radio here. So I want you to look at my face. Have we done this bit? I don't know if we have. Look at my face. Okay. So I have a crooked face. Sometimes people will tell me on social media that I have a crooked face, or that it looks like I had a stroke or something. Does my face look crooked to you?
It doesn't look crooked, but you have one of your eyes. That eye is it's a little more closed. But a lot of people have one eye that's closed a little bit more than the other. I notice that a lot when I watch the news.
Yeah, no, it's something that I notice more than anybody else. But there's a story behind how I got crooked face, a bad case of the crooked face. So back years ago, I went for acupuncture, and it was this crazy lady who said, I can do an adjustment inside your mouth. And I'm like, really? Inside?
Is that necessary, really?
I had jaw thing or something like that, or neck thing. She said, if I go. So anyway, she puts on a latex glove, right to the back of my mouth, inside. And she presses really, really hard inside on my gums. And the next day, I had Bell's palsy.
Oh my God.
And it was definitely her that did it. Like
did you let her know? Did you
absolutely
call her?
I let her know, and she came over. She tried to put needles in my face. I'm like, you don't get it. Half my face is completely paralyzed because you reached in and pressed in on my gum, and it got swollen and it closed off the ocular nerve. And to this day, this one's open, this one's closed, this one has hypertonicity. And I'm super self-conscious about it. And it's one of the reasons why I sort of quit doing TV. I'm going to do a little TV this week, but I mostly quit doing TV because I was tired of people saying, oh, your face is crooked or looks like something's wrong, or just pisses me off. That wherever she is. So, and then whatever happened? I mean, did you have grounds to sue her for causing your crooked face? I never looked into it because I was in a very sort of yogic period in my life where I would think I'm not going to sue anybody. I don't want litigation. So I did confront her. I said, you should never do this to anybody again because you gave me Bell's palsy. She said, I understand. I'm sure she's never done it again. But I never sued her or anything like that.
Well, you could have started a movement of crooked face.
The crooked
insurance.
face movement? Yeah.
Or crooked face insurance.
Exactly. You need it if you see that woman. So now you told me you were watching a couple of shows.
Yeah, so there's one show in particular that I kind of stayed away from because I didn't think that I would like it, and that's Mr. and Mrs. Smith.
I have heard good things.
With, what's his name, Donald Glover?
Donald Glover, yeah.
He's from that show Atlanta, right?
Yeah.
Which is another show I never watched. And I can't, the woman, what's her name? She's from that show, N15. You looking her up?
I'm looking her up, yeah. Donald Glover for sure.
And he's an executive producer on it too.
So tell me the catch. What's the show?
So it's based on the film.
Yeah.
And I don't really remember the film that much. I just remember that Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt had amazing chemistry, and it was kind of fun, a little cheeky, a lot of adventure.
It broke up Brad's marriage.
Exact, and they fell in love while shooting it. That's what I remember. So it's these two spies that get teamed together, and they end up falling in love with one another. They cultivate this relationship. And they go on all these jobs together, but not besides all of the excitement of it. It has kind of like a Mission Impossible, Born Identity kind of feel to it.
Sure.
And they're in all these like beautiful places like Lake Como and all over Italy and aesthetically it's beautiful. But the dialogue is so good and so funny and so raw and honest when it comes to just life and relationships. And they have moments where
by the way, is it Maya Erskine?
Yes.
Yeah.
She's great.
Is she?
She's really good. And the chemistry between the two of them is just amazing.
Oh, that's great.
And so anyway.
Prime?
It's on what's it
Amazon?
on? I think it's on Amazon.
I think it was Amazon Prime.
I think
it's on the list. It's on the list to watch.
Yeah, it's really, really good.
Yeah. I started, I don't know if you started last night, the new Kate Winslet series on HBO.
And I haven't.
It's called The Regime, and it's about some middle European country and some woman who's a crazy dictator who believes that there is mold everywhere. So she has a guy follow her around with a mold detector everywhere she goes to figure out the humidity. And she wants really low humidity. And it's played by Matthias Schoenaerts, who's a great, great actor. He plays the guy that goes around and measures the mold. And eventually they become involved, the mold guy and Kate Winslet in this thing. It is so weird. I'm sure people are going to be talking about this show. It is really, really funny.
Well, I'm going to have Tom watch it because that's one of the things that he does with his job. He tests for mold. He does mold samples.
He could work for her. It's kind of like she's just like a crazy dictator with a weird accent and sort of unspecific European accent. And you don't know what country it is. So it's just like some country that has a lot of cobalt, which I always thought was a color, but apparently is an element, at least in this show it is. So they're deciding whether or not they should do an exclusive deal to sell all their cobalt to the United States. That's the general premise of the show. And she is great. It's nothing like anything she's ever done. She normally does really dour stuff. You know, it's very, you know, she's always, what was the show where she was baking apple pies and everybody loved that? And then didn't she have Mare of Easttown? That was another one of her.
Mare of Easton was great.
Yeah, see, dour though. This one's funny. It's a funny show. Yeah.
I love the mold aspect because so many people call Tom. Everybody's freaked out about mold. I remember working on some job years ago at Sunset Gower Studios, and our offices were below, they were in the basement. So there were no windows. And people that I worked with after, period of time found out what Tom did for a living. And they were like, you think we can get Tom to come in here and check because we think there's mold in our office? And everybody was freaked out that they were breathing it in. And I said, I can't just like have him come in just like randomly without the building knowing, like hire
random mold guy.
Just like come in with his sample kit, like meet me for lunch and then like do like a little test.
Do a little mold test. Yeah. Yeah. It's very, very funny and very weird. And I think it's going to be big. HBO keeps doing these shows. HBO has the most consistent record when it comes to delivering really good shows. Like generally speaking, what's on Sundays for us, 6:00 tends to be a really, really good show. Did you watch Curb last night?
I did not.
Oh, so good. And Richard Lewis plays a big role in Curb last night. And they did an in memoriam beforehand. It was very, very nice. Yeah. Yeah. It was great to talk to Susie about that. So quickly after. I want to let everybody know that if you are listening right now on Apple or Spotify, please subscribe to the show, leave us a 5-star rating and a positive review. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and then you scroll down and you leave us a comment or a review or something snarky or whatever you got. All this stuff helps us to grow the show, and we're making a really big push this year. Sue, I want to try to do something. I'm going to attempt to put this together. A live post-Oscars show the morning after the Oscars direct to YouTube.
Oh, wow.
No idea how to do this, but the idea is that we'll go on live, say at 10 a.m., and we'll do an hour on the Oscars, and people will be able to tune in and watch it live, and then it will be recorded, and people can go back and watch it. What do you think?
I think it's great if you can pull it off. Do you have the means to do that? Do you have people in your corner? Juan is kind of a genius at
he's a savant at this kind of thing.
He's kind of taken over the production of our show.
He really has, and he's done a better job than I ever did. That's for sure. I've got all these. I call them the social media kids. We've got all these guys that used to be interns at the station who are now running social media and running the board and doing all of our YouTube lives. So I'm hoping one of them can help us out so we can get a quick reaction out to the Oscars after the show. Let me see. Was there anything else I wanted to get to? One thing I wanted to get to. So according to 22-year-old model Heike Konings, Leo DiCaprio is very creepy. According to Koenig, she bumped into DiCaprio at a private LA nightclub where they made eye contact, and Leo's manager called her over. Koenig claims Leo asked her to come home with him, but she turned on him. Leo didn't feel too bad about getting rejected because he ended up leaving with another woman. She was invited to go to his home. She turned it down. She said he was very shocked that she didn't say yes. And she says she knew several people that slept with Leo, and he had questionable preferences in the bedroom, including leaving his earphones in during sex. Like, I want to listen to music.
Well, listen to music. Was he taking calls? Was he
taking calls? Yeah. So he's 49, she's 22. Is it appropriate for a 49-year-old guy to roaming through a bar trying to pick up 22-year-olds?
And he's such a public figure too. I mean, I've heard things about him for years. I mean, it came out years ago that when he's with young women, when they turn 25 or 26.
Well, I don't know if that's an official thing, but that is a joke that goes around.
That he just kind of discards them and, like next.
Next, exactly.
That entitlement of being a celebrity and expecting women to just fawn all over you and like, how dare you turn down my advances? I'm Leo DiCaprio. It's such a turnoff. It's just disgusting. It just makes me not like him.
If I was single and if I could do it, I'd do it.
Why would you do it?
If I was single.
No, I know, but it's like, but would you have that attitude? Like, how could you discount this opportunity? Like, what's wrong with you? Would you be like that?
No, I wouldn't be like that, but I would be. I'd be saying yes. Wouldn't you?
No.
You wouldn't say yes.
Yes to what? To if someone if I were Leo DiCaprio, right. You mean?
Right.
No.
Well, like, for example, let's put this into perspective. So you are, I believe you're 65, yeah?
Ish.
Clint Eastwood is 90.
Yeah.
Now, if Clint Eastwood hit on you, I'm trying to put this into perspective.
This is putting it into perspective.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
He's 30 years older than you. If he hit on you,
would he even know? No, I know he's directing movies, so I guess he still has it. Yeah. He's still got it. No, no, not at all. It's so ridiculous. Being a comedian and being on the road and working with a lot of guys who were real hound dogs and a lot of guys who were married and they were cheating on their wives or cheating on their girlfriends. And there was this feeling of, there was a rock star kind of attitude that comedians got when stand-up really imploded in the 80s.
Yeah.
And these guys were getting laid all the time. And really kind of like some comedians were like notorious for it. And
did you judge them?
It's not that the guys who were married and wives didn't know, I didn't tell you the truth. I really didn't give a shit. But like, I remember being on a gig once and we were on some like Jersey gig. I think Alan Havey was with me.
Okay.
And so one of the comedians, and we all drove together. So I don't think it was either of our cars. I think it was the guy who booked us, picked us up in the city, took us to the gig, and then drove us back to the city. And it was far enough away where you weren't going to take public transportation, especially not at like 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
So we couldn't find the other comedian. And it's like, where is he? And like, he met some woman, I guess while Alan was on stage. Alan was the headliner. And like, he like was having sex with a woman somewhere.
Oh, wow.
I don't know. And it was like, oh, you gotta be kidding me. It's like, anyway.
Okay. What about if it was Anthony Hopkins? He's in his 90s. If Anthony Hopkins hit on you.
Even if someone like young and cute, hit on me.
Oh, if Leo hit on you, you would say yes.
Oh.
If you were single?
I would not. No. He's such a turnoff.
Oh, yeah.
that whole star thing. I mean, it's never
Not impressed.
Not at all. Not
All right.
at all.
Well, we got a star coming on the show right now. Our guest today is a stand-up comic and actor. You've seen him on shows like Ground Floor, Those Who Can't, Apple's Physical, and he was one of the stars of Damien Chazelle's film Babylon. He's done 5 stand-up comedy specials, appeared on The Tonight Show and Conan, and his latest comedy special is Rory Scovel, Religion, Sex, and a Few Things in Between. It is now streaming on Max. Rory, thanks a lot for coming on, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the invite. I appreciate it.
So you've been on the show before. What was that like for you?
To be on the show? Well, I did well enough from that experience. I got to come back.
You're
Round
a returning
two.
champion. Exactly.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
And we bumped up your salary too.
Yeah,
So.
and that's look. So all wins for me.
So I watched your show as a devout Christian.
Yeah.
I watched your show. I'm kidding. I'm not a devout.
I was gonna say, how far did you get?
But you went right in on religion. Why did you choose to start that? Was this like because nobody else does this kind of material?
I gotta say, when I started the tour in April of 2023, knowing that I was putting an act together and that ultimately at the end of it, at some point, I would feel as though it's time to shoot it for a special. That isn't how the show started. And this is one thing I love about touring, and it's something I love about being open to letting a show evolve and grow and change as you go. But one night I did a set in Phoenix on this tour, and to give you sort of a longer answer, I tucked my shirt in for some reason. And I just did it in the green room, and I announced to everybody in the green room, I was like, I know this looks kind of strange, at least because I just don't do this. I go, but I got to say, it just feels so good, and it just feels very right. And everyone's like, no, it looks fine. Yeah, it's good. So that sort of insecurity to feel the need to announce it to the green room, I then carried that on stage to sort of announce to the crowd that I also was happy with this choice, but I know maybe it looks strange. And then that just led me to saying it felt more Christian, which was sort of that first stepping stone into, oh, that got like a big laugh. Like, oh, well, let's put that in our back pocket. We just discovered a thing that I was just sort of putting out there organically, got a laugh. So maybe there's more there. And just at that Phoenix show, I then kind of kept walking down that road and threw out some other religious stuff. And then after that show, I debated with my friend Zach, who opened the show, and my tour manager, Grant, who, I just said, I think the show could start there. And they were like, I don't know. I was also apprehensive because we were like, it's religion. But then I just kept trying it and doing it more, and it was working. So the only reason I had any, sort of faith in the fact that it would work was that I also had now, tangible evidence, like real evidence that says, no, it is working. People don't mind that you're starting right away with religion. And that in itself was a bit of a revelation for me. Like, oh, wow, this topic that I would have thought maybe I need to build a rapport before we get here was so, I guess, just so maybe out of the blue that people didn't mind. And also, I think I'm not so attacking with it. I'm not like, quote unquote, trying to be preachy. I know there's sort of an irony to that, but
Yes, there is.
yeah, but you know what I mean? Like I sort of am and I'm not, but I think I did a decent job with how I told those jokes that maybe set people at ease, even if they disagreed.
Yeah, I mean, it could be, a kind of polarizing subject, and you eased into it in a very comfortable way. I wanted to ask you about the improvising part, because I know that you are known for being a big improviser. You did shows some years ago where you did, 6 one-hour shows, 6 nights in a row, and each show was different.
Right.
Do you get the feeling that people who know you are always wondering, was that like a planned joke, or did that just come out of, just his style?
I think they do wonder that, and I like that, because a lot of the jokes I do, a lot of times are born out of that. Like, for instance, me just saying the shirt tucked in thing, not in the sense that it was some like improvised moment, but it wasn't like a line I wrote down. So then the way I said it that first time when it got a laugh, I think my brain just kind of recorded like, oh, you said it this way with this pace and this rhythm and this cadence. And so I think then from then on, if I just maintain that, it kind of stays in that world of feeling as though it was very spontaneous and in the moment. And so a lot of my material, a lot of the sex jokes in this special came out of those 6 shows that you're talking about in Atlanta. And I think someone could even wonder if those were in the moment and improvised, because the first time I did them, they were in the moment and improvised. And I didn't adjust too many things with them other than eliminating a line that maybe wasn't funny, or maybe adding a line that kind of found its way in on another show, also in an improvised way. And so I think it creates the illusion that maybe the material is also improvised. And I think it blends well because I still do improvised spontaneous moments in the show, because those are my favorite things to do. If there's a road to go down of, if there's potential failure, or if I can dig myself into a ditch, for better or worse, I'm stimulated by that. Because I can always get out of that ditch.
I want to just talk a little bit more about improvising. I did stand-up for a very long time. For like 30 years. And when I improvised on stage, it was so much more rewarding than my planned material.
Yeah.
I mean,
I also think it's a testament to the proof for us as individuals that you are just funny, as opposed to being like, oh, I'm a good writer. Oh, I figured out delivery. But to do it on the spot, and I'm not saying people that can't improvise aren't wildly funny, but I do like the idea that it comes from this organic, natural place of like, you are funny, and it isn't because of something that was pre-decided and you wrote it down and you learned over time how to say it, but you're funny that in the moment you can be funny. And for me, it stems from that element of people that kind of get into comedy because they are funny with their friends. We always say those people think they can do stand-up just because they're funny with their friends, and a lot of them go to try it and find out they can't. Mm-hmm. But I was, and this is what stimulated that documentary about doing the 6 shows, was I'm curious about the person who's funny with their friends. What if they can do stand-up, if they could just figure out how to just still be funny with their friends when they're by themselves and they don't know anyone in the crowd? Because I believe they can. I believe they could possibly still be funny if they just learned public speaking as opposed to specifically stand-up comedy.
So were you funny with your friends when you were growing up?
I was a class clown. I would do whatever it took to get a laugh, and I think the only reason I've survived in stand-up is because before I ever started, I had already bombed a million times publicly and socially, where it actually carries more weight than bombing on stage, frankly. I've ruined relationships. So, that was my get attention. That was my desperation for attention, and I would do whatever it took to just get a smile or a laugh or, someone to validation, really.
Yeah. I always say affirmation is like oxygen for me. I need a lot of it.
Yes. Yep.
So did you grow up religious? I know you grew up in Greenville, South Carolina, and I have relatives that live in Spartanburg, and I know that
that's where I went to college.
Oh, you did? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yes. They were transplanted Jews that moved to South Carolina, and we were like, "What? What are you doing down there?"
The Bible Belt.
So what was your upbringing like?
Catholic. I was raised Catholic. My family was very Catholic, still very Catholic. My father was very Catholic. I went to a private Catholic school from kindergarten through 8th grade, and then I went to a private Episcopalian high school for a few years, and then I went to a regular public high school after that, and then college. So always raised Catholic, church all the time, and then in college, now when I get to decide my own schedule, couldn't be right away. I was done with going. In high school, I was already starting to veer away from feeling like I don't think this is for me, and I don't think it's I don't think it's the absolute truth. I don't think that a lot of this is, there's ideas in this that I think are great. But then I think ultimately, who knows, maybe it's shifted over time, but it just felt like a lot more judgment and a lot more separation. And I just didn't subscribe to it. And
I don't know. I don't know many people who go to church now. I mean,
yeah,
it's you have a joke about that, I think, at some point in the special, right?
Yeah, if you can imagine still going, which always gets it's always a 50-50. You never know how, you don't know what part of the country you're in where that's going to.
Because I was raised Catholic, and I mean, we did not miss Mass under any circumstances. Even if we were sick, we went to Mass. And it was so critical. I mean, all the stuff, the communion and the confirmation. Did you go through confirmation?
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, all the CCD. I remember.
Same.
I remember with CCD, I got in trouble all the time because I was challenging the legitimacy of some of the things Father Wilhelm was saying. Like,
right.
In Catholicism, they believe in transmutation. Which is that the bread and the wine actually is the body and blood of Christ. It's not a symbol of it. It actually is. So I remember one day having a conversation where I said, Father Wilhelm, if we took that to a lab, they would say that is just bread and wine. And
you're already out.
So scolded over that one. But I do think we miss something from church. I think we miss sort of one of those places that everybody got together, had a big communal, like you have a big communal space when you do a comedy show.
Sure.
I think church was a big communal space where everybody used to go and felt, you mentioned togetherness or separateness, felt together in some way. I think we've lost that.
I agree. And I like that. And I wish that could be a thing that was just more in the ways, like the thing I tell everyone about religion and the way that I've talked about it with my daughter is that I say the blueprint for who Jesus Christ in the context that we've learned about is perfect. This is how we should all be in terms of compassion and respect and like setting yourself, like all of the elements of it. I was like, this is for all of humanity. This is a great character in history that, whether if we go, well, he didn't really exist, I go, it doesn't matter. It's written perfectly that if you can behave this way and other people behave this way, then I refuse to believe that it can't work and we can't prosper and we can't thrive. I go, I know that it's an impossibility. It will never happen where everyone is like, yeah, great. let's all try it. But that's my outlook on it. And the other side of that is also the space, to have this space where people can come together and feel together. I think what I dislike is that you don't get it. It's similar to like a MAGA rally, I would assume, where they all go, hey, look, we all think the same thing, so no opposition, and so we can all be happy. To you questioning about the wine and bread, to me, nothing should be better. Like, that should have excited everybody to be like, here is someone questioning it. Now provide him with an answer and I will say, I have met friends who are religious and I love them so much. And had I grown up and they were my teachers, I might still be religious because their perspective on it was fantastic. And they would have given you an incredible answer where you go, oh, all right, I didn't look at it that way. That's a great answer. I'm still on board. But instead, a lot of the leaders, and it's not just religious, it's almost literally any institution, but a lot of those leaders just can't provide an answer and instead scold you. And you're like, oh, well,
how could you ask me that?
Exactly. So all that makes me think is you don't have any context. You just want me to surrender all of my mental freedoms to accommodate, your show every Sunday.
Yeah, it is. It's a big show. The Catholics put on a show.
There's a show. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up Jewish. I didn't grow up very religious, but I remember I went through a period where I did a lot of colleges. So I got picked up once from a woman who, I say she was an older woman. I was probably my early 20s. She may have been in her 40s, but old enough to know in my mind.
Yeah.
And we were in the car for a long time, and something came up about buying something, and she said, and I Jewed them down.
Oh.
And I was like, whoa. And
Yeah.
and she didn't know anything about me, but she just used the term so freely.
Yes.
And I was extremely offended, but I didn't say anything. And then, I was thinking to myself, how she grew up, that was a way of expression. And you are a product of what of your upbringing. And to me, it was unfortunate that she was at the age that she was and still didn't realize what she said was so inappropriate.
Right. Yeah. I know.
I had that with my dad. My dad grew up in Altoona, Pennsylvania, and wound up in Palm Springs. And I told him right away, because I heard him do it, and all of his neighbors are Jewish. He uses Jew as a verb. You cannot use Jew as a verb. It's just not okay. Ever.
Right.
Ever.
Yeah.
But product, I guess, of being from he was an old-fashioned redneck. That was common lingo, I guess.
Yeah, I think there's lingo like that you get introduced to as a kid, and sometimes you don't ever step back to actually think what it even means. And you don't actually, and some people, and to your point about her age, at some point, your age, you just go, oh, wait, that's probably not okay. Or someone's already confronted you, and said like, hey, just so you know. And then you do the mature, rightful thing of going, oh, I'm so sorry. Now that I'm thinking about it, you're right, and I'm sorry. Which I think is you can provide so much grace to that person and be like, okay, great. Well, now you know. So if you do it again, well, then you are pretty much a jerk.
Yeah.
You clearly don't care that you're hurting people. But you've done this all the time, and it seems like you kind of were unaware. But I think there's a lot of people that talk like that. Maybe not that specific example, but talk like that, and they at no point if they step back to be like, oh wait, this isn't okay. I'm saying a hurtful, wrong sort of thing, and then you get to make a choice. Do I want to grow and change and evolve, or would I rather just keep, being like this, being hurtful, knowingly?
Yeah, it really is like a two-way street, like as a comedian, you open yourself up to a room of people who do not know you, and you talk about the things that you are passionate about. And, but as an audience member, they come into a room to see somebody who maybe they've never seen before, and they have no idea what their beliefs are.
Yeah.
So, I've had confrontations. I did a show, years ago, and this woman got really pissed off at me because I had been talking political, and I'd been talking about a particular person. Whatever. I'm not even going to mention his name. And anyway, there was a Q&A afterwards, and she got really, really heated about what I was saying, and she actually said to me, you don't know who's in the audience, so you have to be very careful about what you say. And I said, well, as an audience member, you have to walk into a club with an open mind because you don't know what I'm going to say. And I don't have the luxury of interviewing everybody before they sit down to figure out what their beliefs are. So, and I wouldn't change what I say anyway, because I'm not trying to change your mind.
Yeah.
If you agree with me, you agree with me. If you don't, you don't, and move on. So I'm not up here wanting to get into a fight with the audience.
Right.
I'm just saying how I feel. You buy it or you don't buy it.
Yeah, I think there's an element of artistic entitlement that audiences sometimes can feel. And it's not so much audiences, but it's members of an audience, like in this example. And, where people are like, yeah, but this isn't what I wanted to see. And they don't even understand how entitled that sentence alone even is, to go, well, what do you want this fully catered to you so that you feel great? Or can you not step into a space of vulnerability and discomfort where maybe some of your things are challenged, and maybe, quite frankly, they need to be challenged because you've gotten too comfortable in your way of life that you can't see that maybe you might be wrong. And also, you don't even perceive yourself as being egotistical because you won't allow yourself to be wrong. You're more embarrassed by it rather than proud of the fact that maybe you can accept that you're wrong, and it might set you on the right path. Okay, I think that, at least for me, in doing the jokes that I do, I think because I have, specifically in this special, because that's just sort of what's in my mind as my perception of this event and this space and how I think it should be. I think that's what causes me to, I don't think it's bold, but to be so bold as to open with religion.
Yeah,
is
right.
Because if someone were to say, well, I'm uncomfortable and I don't know if I want to talk about this, I think I'm kind of like, well, great. You're who I was hoping would be here, because without a little bit of friction, this is actually not as fun. If you all already kind of agree with me, well, then that means I have to think of new topics. And I don't really like a lot of the work.
Is your wife really a witch?
She is a witch. She's a witch.
An actual witch?
She is a witch. She's a self-described witch. But I think what I've learned in this adventure is that our perception of that word alone is not what we perceive it to be when we picture Wizard of Oz or we picture witches. It's more just a cultural description of I think a specific culture that's actually more interesting, and it's easy to make fun of, and I do it. Clearly, I'm not above anybody. I make fun of it in the special, but I think it's rapidly growing across the country. There were times when I would do those jokes about my wife being a witch, and people would be like, "What?" Which is kind of where the joke goes. But I have to say, the more I've toured, the more I notice people being less surprised by it, because I think it's a culture that many women, specifically in major cities, have found. And even though I joke a certain way about it, I actually think it's kind of great. I like that she has this, and I found it interesting. I don't believe all of the elements of it, but I got to say, I kind of like that there's an alternative.
But is she casting spells and stuff?
I don't think so, but
it's not like an episode.
At the same time, my hairline's only going one way, and that
I know. All of it, all of a sudden, we're talking to you, and it's like, yeah.
I'm like, suddenly my left hand is just. No, I don't think there is that, but at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised. But it's, I think there's elements of it that I think are ridiculous, but it does lead to deeper conversations, and I think deeper psychological self-evaluation, and I think I just see those things as healthy. So do I love that it's ripe for ridicule? Yeah. I mean, I'm always looking for 5 new minutes, but I do actually kind of like it. So I think that's why that line exists in the show. I do secretly hope the crystals work. I think it's there to be like, look, I might make fun of it, but if you told me all these things actually work and it's legit, I'd be over the moon. Be great.
How does she feel about you talking about that and some of the, there's some racy stuff in
Sure.
this show? How does she, or even the rest of your family, how do they feel about some of the material that you do on stage?
For her, I'll kind of go in 2 parts here, but her specifically, we've been together 19 years now, and I think she's just come to accept that these are just elements that I talk about, and that they are, in many ways, for the sake of entertainment, exaggerated. And I think she laughs at it. I think she thinks it's funny. I do think she probably would love it if I ran it by her first. These more vulnerable topics, just because her family does see it. And it's like, I don't know that I want them to know that. But as you know, we have a disease. And if a joke is funny and it works, I can't. That's the drug. You're asking me to give up the drug, and at all costs, I have to protect the drug. I've got to keep the drug. As far as family goes, I bet it's awkward for my family, but I think I appreciate that it's weird when I watch myself do stand up, for instance, in looking at the cuts and getting this special organized and together and then premiering it even. I don't really see myself, even though I clearly understand that it's me. I don't think I listen to it and think any of this is bad. I think it's literally just me being honest. And if anybody were to judge my character, specifically in my family, who knows me, I think they might be like, oh, maybe that all feels very vulnerable. And it all feels like you're exposing things that you feel sexually. I think I would just say, well, I think it's maybe because I'm 43 now, and I think I'm less afraid to do that. And I think it's comforting for me to know that I can turn it into a joke. And I think it's also more comforting for me to know that there are members of the audience that appreciate me talking about this because they heavily relate to the massive amount of vulnerability that maybe exists in talking about sex and stuff. And, you know, if it exposes me, my perceptions of love or lust or whatever, I think instead of being embarrassed by that, I think I'm more excited to know that this is a connective tissue to people. Talking about these insecurities is potentially the only way I can stay in front of AI.
Right. Now, I have this feeling, we had this actual conversation on the show that Sue, for a while, believed that her husband, Tom, never watched porn, ever.
Okay.
And I said, Sue,
That's interesting.
there's no way. There's no way an adult male human being in the US of A does not watch porn.
With the level of easy access now?
Yeah, exactly. And Sue was stunned. You were stunned to find out that Tom watches porn.
But it's not that he watches it. Like
Yeah, that does sound like it's scheduled when you say it that way.
Yeah, right. It's like all of a sudden alarm goes off, and I I see him take some lotion and toilet paper into the bedroom. You know.
Mine's 3 o'clock. I actually gotta bounce out of here.
I have a thing.
I have an appointment.
But when I asked him, I told him what happened on our show, and he all of a sudden, like the blood drained out of his face.
Yeah.
He just didn't seem like the kind of guy, if that makes sense to you in any way.
It does.
That would watch porn.
Yeah.
And then I went further, and I was talking to one of my brothers, and I said, they're having this conversation about porn, and he's older than me, and I said, do you watch porn? And he kind of like stumbled, and he said, well, you know, I have. And I was like, really?
Yeah.
So I guess every guy watches porn or has watched porn.
The phrase "I have" means yes, I currently do.
I have.
It's very politically smart to be. I saw it on someone else's computer when they were watching it.
I just happened to be there.
So yeah, it's very strange. But to the blood draining from your face, I think that's what I like about talking about it in stand-up. Is I'm almost like, you know, let's just go ahead and get this out of the way, and then maybe if I'm so bold as to just outright say this, maybe we can all just kind of admit, oh yeah, I do it, you know, for better or worse. Not to say like, hey, everyone should or everyone shouldn't, but you know, maybe there's some people that are like, I have breezed through some sites, and it's like, yeah, well, maybe instead of being ashamed of that or embarrassed by it, maybe there's a level of owning it and feeling okay about it, and then maybe you feel like maybe it changes you in some sort of positive way.
Yeah, I mean, when I look at my favorites bar on my computer, it's, you know, ESPN, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Washington Post, Pornhub.
Yeah.
I think it goes pretty much in that.
Yeah, and I gotta admit, I get a lot of my news from Pornhub too, so I don't blame you.
Well, don't put StubHub next to Pornhub.
Why aren't these tickets?
What are these tickets to?
The shows I'm trying to ticket, they're all in Amsterdam. I can't get to these shows.
So I want to ask you about Babylon, which was my favorite movie of last year, Damien Chazelle, and you had. I mean, it wasn't a big role, but it was such a cool role. You got to be in that scene with Tobey Maguire and Diego Calva, and going into, what was that place you went down into the?
Yeah, just going into his sort of underground, I guess, like roadhouse in a way, just dark, dank, cave-like roadhouse with what we know as multiple floors down into the ground, but
some sort of hellscape.
pretty much some sort of hellscape. But yeah, that was pretty wild to get to do, and also just to show up to work and know that you're going to be working with someone like Tobey Maguire is very surreal. Luckily, I had already been working with Margot Robbie, so I was like, oh,
Yeah, that's right.
You're like, oh, I've already been playing on this court, so all right. But I got to say, it's for someone like myself who doesn't have some vast resume of having, worked with all these huge names. It's strange when you start to do that. You hope that you get to keep doing it, but I got to say, it's strange when you start to do it and you just want to you want to get on the court and you want to maybe shoot the ball. You just don't want to be the guy that turns it over all the time. So that was basically my outlook on these scenes. Like, all right, just pass the ball. You get it, just pass it. Get it to your teammate. That's all you got to do.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? Assists are great.
I'll take assists. Just stay alive. Stay alive. Get to stay on the court.
So how'd you get it?
Putting myself on tape during COVID and submitting it, and then we were shooting the first season of Physical, which I think that's what we were talking about.
Yeah, we were talking
last time.
about
Yeah. I can't remember which season it was because I got to say all three of those blend together.
I think it was the first season.
It was when we were shooting the first season. It was like around November, and I had submitted a tape probably 5 months prior. But for whatever reason, I just said to my manager, hey, did they end up shooting that movie or did they have to stop because of COVID? I'm only asking because now that I'm shooting Physical, my confidence is a little bit higher and I wouldn't mind putting myself back on tape if there was a stall, kind of thing. And she was like, oh, yeah, let me look into it. And then, she got back to me so quickly and she was like, yeah, Damien wants to get on a Zoom with you tomorrow. And so instantly I was like, oh, wow. I'm like, I didn't realize it, but I guess I'm clearly in the running. I don't know why he would get on a Zoom if I wasn't. And then it led to us. Literally, I auditioned for that movie the exact same way our 3 screens are sitting. It's like the same exact element with him. And after that, I just got to do it. It's very, very bizarre.
Yeah, Zoom stuff.
Yeah, but I know actors who quit because of
they can't
handle the
audition.
technology of taping at home and getting
I don't like
right and getting the sound right. And are we missing something by actors not being able to go into casting offices?
No, I prefer it. I don't mind going on tape now. I got to say, I don't mind going on tape now because I've developed a little bit of a system in doing it. When my wife needs to go on tape or I need to go on tape, we're both there to, for the most part, line read and or read the lines and be on the other side of the camera helping. But, during COVID with the sudden production of all this lighting equipment that's very cheap and affordable and makes you look great, that also boosts your confidence to be like, oh, I can actually have decent lighting for my basement. I literally do it down here behind me. But to have that in my basement up against a wall and the lighting that actually makes you look more presentable and somewhat more professional, that also just raises your confidence to feel like, oh, well, now if I can just get the read in the right place, then maybe I actually am submitting something significant. And I don't mind that. As a comic, I got to say if someone says, hey, come and be in the room and audition, I don't mind that either. But, and this, but as a comic, you're not necessarily walking into a room that's the same as what we get to walk into on stage. And so a lot of times, sadly, we shut down because we're not getting any response. They're literally just watching us and they're not going to laugh or react a lot of times. Sometimes they do. And, that can be great in its own way. For a stand-up comic, it can be shattering because you're like, oh, I'm bombing and we can't stop thinking how to get out of it. And these aren't your words. There's no way out of it.
Right.
Going.
Talking about comedians doing shows on Zoom, a friend of mine was telling me she was doing a show and there was, a lot of people were watching. There was a guy who was actually sitting there with his dog and the guy left the room and the dog stayed to watch her act.
Yeah, I love that. The dog is like, I don't know, I'm into this. I like it. I relate to this. It's all very relatable for me.
So when did you start painting? I know you're painting now, right?
Yeah, it's become a pretty big obsession for me. I started, I think the first like painting I'd kind of done that was just okay, but like I got into it because my daughter started school, and here she was in preschool doing finger painting and crayons and whatever, and so we would buy that stuff, and now she's doing that stuff at home as you do, and I just kind of partook and would like do some of it, and it immediately reminds you of being a kid yourself, and you feel good about that, and then you start wondering, why do we ever stop doing this? And so I started trying to paint, not really knowing what I was doing, and then during COVID I just kind of committed a little bit more to it, making horrible painting after horrible painting, but like having fun doing it. And that was when I realized, like, oh, painting isn't about making something. It's literally about the act of just doing it, like pickup sports are for all of us who are never going to play professional sports. I think a lot of people look at painting like, well, you're never going to sell it or make a significant painting. It's like, yeah, but you're also never going to play in the NBA. So should you never go shoot hoops? It's really, it's just, it's an exercise that feels good for your body and your brain. And I started to see painting that way, where I was like, oh, this actually feels really meditative. I'll sometimes pour myself a drink. Maybe I'll smoke a couple hits of a joint, and I'll have music going, and I'm just painting, and I'm just like, this feels good. This is relaxing. This is meditative. And I think just all that repetition led to me kind of being like, well, now wait, hold on. I actually think this one is pretty good. And I just kind of kept going and going and going. And now I think they are pretty good. I have a lot of confidence in them. And I did an art show recently, and now I sell some of them. And it's pretty crazy to be doing it. But I try to tell a lot of people, I believe all of us are artistic in our own way. We do one painting and we go, no, see, I'm not. And you're like, well, all right, well, go make dinner for the first time ever in your life. Do you think it's going to be, a restaurant-worthy meal? No. Well, depending on the restaurant. But it's probably not going to be great. But does that mean you can't become a chef in some way, I think we always think, well, if you're not going to be Picasso, why even do it? It's like, well, then none of us should be doing anything, really.
Mm-hmm. So how much would it cost me to replace my Chinatown poster with a Rory Scovel original?
Something that size?
Yeah.
That Chinatown poster right there?
Yeah.
Probably $3,000.
Get out of here.
Yeah.
No, seriously. Really?
I post all of the prices based on, because I really fall in love with a lot of the paintings, and I deep down don't really want to sell them. Because I like them. You develop this weird relationship where even money isn't really enough to make you want to part with this thing that you really feel something with, because when you paint it, it kind of comes out of nowhere, and it's hard to detach with this thing that's suddenly good that just came out of your brain, but you don't know even where in your brain it came from, and you physically don't even understand what you were doing to even make it become a thing. I think that mystery is so significant that I price all of my paintings at the number I would need to see to feel good about parting ways with it, because we all have a number for every material.
You're making bank on this stuff, right?
Well, I'm not selling 10 a day, which would be incredible. If I was selling 10 a day, that'd be all we were talking about on this show, because that's all I would be doing. But it's going well, and I think the reason it's comfortably going well, I think, is because that is not my main endeavor, and it's not my main revenue stream. So I get to kind of have fun with it. If it was my main revenue stream, that number to part with those paintings would be much lower. I would be in a place of like, well, I gotta sell it. But I will say my wife is a little bit tired of how many paintings I've stacked up that are hard to part with. I think she's like, well, you have to. These got to go. It's too much.
So where do we find these paintings? You have a website?
I have a website, roryscovel.com, has all of the paintings that were in the art show. There were about 20, we did 23 pieces, 7 of which were just going to be kept by myself and some of my friends that I had done a painting for them, and they let it be in the art show. And then the remainder we were up for sale, and I think we've sold 8 or 9 of those paintings that were available. Wow. And now I just recently went through all the paintings, and I already have 23 more where I could do another show. So I think I'm going to upload all those photos to the website to just kind of add to that gallery instead of always doing an art show, which I really had a lot of fun doing, but I feel like it's very strange to do one too quickly. And I want to just post these and be like, yeah, if you buy it, you buy it. If you don't, you don't. I kind of, like I said, I kind of like keeping them.
Yeah.
Just have nowhere to put them.
Well,
but I do like looking at them.
I want to let people know RoryScovel.com is where you can see the art. The
right.
special is really, really funny. Religion, sex, and a few things in between. It is streaming now on Max. Rory, thanks a lot for coming on, man. We appreciate it.
I appreciate it. I love the conversation with you guys, so thank you very much.
There you have it, Rory Scovel. Very funny comedy special. And the painting thing, I was just saying off the air, I went through a big painting phase in my life. I go on runs where I do certain thing for a long period of time and then I stop and never do it again. Painting was one of those things. And there's a Mason original that hangs right in our hallway inside our house.
Well, I'd like to see it. I mean, has it been there for a while?
It has. It's been there since we moved in. Most people just walk by it and think, oh, that's a piece of art. It's terrible. I think it's terrible.
Or is that a Mason? Is that an original Mason?
It literally says Mason on it. And the signature's way too big. I'll have to get it and show it to you.
You have to.
Because it is
The signature is what you focus on.
Really big.
You have just had like a huge ego when you were painting?
No, because it's with a paintbrush and you're painting over other paint. And so you have to paint, and the signature came out really, really big. Just a really big MASON. It's impossible to miss. I'm not selling it for $3,000 though. I have no attachment to it though. If somebody wants to buy it, I'm not like Rory. Come over and buy it. I'm good with that. All right. Well, there you have it. There is our Culture Pop podcast. Rory Scovel, great guest. Appreciate his time a lot. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, and subscribe on YouTube also. Leave us comments and ratings and reviews and all that stuff. And we will see everybody next time on the Culture Pop podcast.